Before we do the talking for today, which is about risk management, I would like to introduce your assessment for this course, okay? At the moment for term 1, okay? So that's have been decided, so I can introduce to you. I have already uploaded to Teams. So I'm just
When we have to do the assessment, ma'am, sorry, when we have to do the assessment, for Thursday or for the next week?
It will be in week 13, so don't worry, okay? Now,
Okay.
so I'm just showing you now you can start working on it. You have 6-7 weeks to get this ready, okay? This is a group work. From today, you can start work on it about assessment, so listen carefully, okay? So if you look at the screen, I have uploaded assessment 2024 here. If you open it, you have got 3 Word documents. And the first one, overview, will give you what this assessment is about, okay? So this assessment has 3 portions, okay? You have to achieve 50% overall to pass. And the 3 portions of this assessment I give you today. You finish April 12th, April 16th, and April 19th. So on April 12th, you submit the group report. On April 16th, you do the presentation. On April 19th, you submit your individual report. Okay, so 3 parts. Each part has 50, 20, and 30 weight, 30% weight. Okay, so that's the overview of this assessment. And then I introduce the details about this assessment. There are 2 documents. This one is about the group work. So this is a group report plus a group presentation. So for this assessment, you are required to create a project for Cancer Research UK. You need to develop a project for a fashion show for a charity. Cancer Research UK is a charity, okay? The date for this fashion show is August 16. This is a fictional. This event location is decided. Ignore all the practicality in terms of making the book. You only need to design the event. Okay, in this task, you need to define what the project starting date, starting time and ending time. And also you need to look into the cost. You have to develop a costing form to analyze if this event is going to make money. Okay, so that will determine by the pricing you're going to set for this one. But you need to produce a costing schedule for this one. And you also need to identify all the deliverables. Okay, as we have studied in prior weeks, that you need to break down this whole project into smaller deliverables. And using the breakdown structure format to design your event, okay? And then design a matrix, responsibility matrix to specify different people in your group, their responsibilities. Also produce a work schedule using Microsoft project or Libro, whichever you prefer, and then put the beginning time, ending time, duration of each of the tasks. That is your estimation to lead you to the real event. Create your time estimate, create your cost estimate, okay? And also in today, we're looking into the risk breakdown structure, which you should be incorporate into your report as well, which is the risk estimation and risk management plan. And also number 7, develop a closure plan for this project. There are some marking criteria which you can have a look, basically how clear your understanding of this topic, how critical you develop your management plan, how much research you have done, okay, how you work with each other and you are clear with each other's duty and tasks and how you collaborate with each other. Okay, so this is the first document. Other than that group project document, You also have this document. This one is for your individual work, okay? Some of these are repeating from the first one, but the main thing is you need to write here. This is something that about yourself. So this report must also include individual reflective statements written by each member of the team, okay, yourself, and the word limit is maximum 1,000 word and should feature at the end of this report after the references, okay? In terms of the content, you reflect on how did the team operate in terms of decision making, team working, role playing, and coordination. What do you think about the team evaluation? Does this teamwork go well? Do you have any lessons to learn from it? What kind of experience you have that you feel most valuable and memorable, okay? And finally, what advice would you give to a student taking part in the cancer research fashion show in the future? So this one is another 1,000 words. You need to write it similarly like a report. That's your individual work. If you got any charts, appendixes, references, you need to put them very professionally as well, okay, in this report. Okay, that's two parts of the work, one for group, one for individual. You will see I have uploaded some examples, okay? This come from the previous students' work and some other work and some readings. So you can refer to, but you can't completely copy a whole chunk of the information. But you can look into the structure, okay, and develop your own creativity. This is one of the work that coming from someone else. So this is a presentation, basically, with a very standard structure. So you can refer to this work, the structure, the content, and then the information. So for example, in this one, introduction, which basically defines the aim of this work and some overview about the outcome of the work. And venue is specified in the assessment brief, but you can develop some deliverables and the details when you are writing this presentation. And then after this is a planning the event. So that specify how this group of people plan their event. And which one is the work breakdown structure, which are specified that you must provide in your group work. The event, timeline of the event, this is actually a costing. So you must do a costing briefly as well, that to specify that this event is planned to make a certain amount of profit for the charity. Okay. That will be, but you have to know and be familiar with other costs. Other costs could include, for example, the models. If you employ some models, some overheads, for example, the drinks, if you want to serve some of the drinks, but if you want to make a profit from the drinks, then that you should specify as well. But that's up to you. There are some basic information provided, but there are many other things that you can develop based on your perspective on how you want to organize this event. And then is the responsibility matrix. So you need to specify who is the manager for this projects and other working managers alongside with the project manager, okay? So that's the second one, responsibility matrix. And then another one is the grant chart, which it specifies all the deliverables in greater details and their starting, ending time, as well as their durations, okay? Budgeting as well. Budgeting relates to the costing, but you can do this together with the costing to give the charity overview and understanding how much donation could be raised from this charity event. These are quite detailed. It looks into different costs, okay, including the food, the deco, equipment, etc., and the profitability. And then risk assessment from this one as well. Okay, you will do this risk assessment as well, using some of the forms and the charts and tools that we're going to study today. And the closing plan is, this one is quite simple, okay, but it has got enough information. For example, you want to measure the performance of this event, then you might want to give people a questionnaire card at the end of this event, of the beginning, or you might want to take records of the people's contact. So in the future, you can keep contact with them and you can also ask them about the feedback. Okay, so this is some closure plans that if you got any other interests, ideas that you can put into it. references. So this is one quite complete example of the presentation of previous work. The other things, you can look at them yourself, okay, one by one. So this is another project, but this is not a fashion show, okay? You can look into the structure and content for your references and some more. There are some event-related management reading materials that I have given to you, some fashion design must tips, etc. Okay, so students, today we're six or seven topic, which is managing risk. That's a key part in the project management. Okay, so far we have studied quite a lot of topics when you're managing a project. If you look at the fashion show, you will have a realistic understanding. There are hundreds of aspects that you have to manage. So risk normally has to be monitored, is a vital part. One is for events purposes. So if the events need to go ahead successfully and foresee all the unexpected and uncertainty, and organize the event successfully, then the risk aspects need to be assessed and monitored and measured as well and managed. On the other hand, there are legal aspects as well. So for many companies, managing different types of events, no matter big and small, there are legal requirements, including, for example, consumer protection law, health and safety law, and employment law. Okay, in this country, in the UK, in different countries, there may be different aspects in the law. So for regulatory requirements, companies need to assess their risk status and develop risk prevention or risk mitigation policies. So that's the key part we're studying. There are many events and businesses that end up disastrous because risk assessment have not been done properly, or risk management are not in good place. Okay, that can make a small disaster turn into bigger disasters. So this is the topic for today. In terms of the reading, that would be here. Okay, if you read the textbook, that would be this part of the textbook. And in terms of the learning outcome, we're going to look at what risk management process is. Also understand what kind of project risks are, and assess their different significance, probability of occurring, okay, and develop mitigating policies or contingency policies in order to manage and cope with uncertain and risk situation. Risk management process, we look at what risk is first. Simply speaking, every project managers need to understand risks. This is an inherent part of project. So all project, okay, every project manager need to look at risk element. Doesn't matter, for example, you say that you have a fashion show, maybe it doesn't seem so very risky, okay, just some people working, but there may be possibility of the lighting, electricity, okay, many different projects has risk factors. So no amount of planning can overcome risk or the inability to control chance events. In the context of a project, risk is an uncertain event or a condition that, if it occurs, has normally a negative impact, okay, on the project objectives. Sometimes can be small, sometimes can be big. A risk has a cause, and if it occurs, will have a consequence. Okay, that's the definition of a risk. So it's an uncertain event, okay, and tend to go wrong as well. That would cost the project significantly, financially, and cost human life. So risk management is a management approach that look into the risk issues and develop approaches to manage this situation. So risk management is an attempt to recognize, identify these potentials, these unforeseeable future events, okay, particularly those events that could have negative impacts that may occur when the project is started or implemented, and find out in advance if anything could go wrong or not, and how to minimize this impact if something like unavoidable, or if something can be minimized, but it will never be eliminated, then project management needs to look into the possible approaches to minimize the occurrence, the probability of the occurrence of those events. In the meantime, minimize the negative consequences. This could be done before the event, and sometimes can be done during the event. Okay, so if you look into the chart that shows the risk event procedure, this graphic model present the risk management challenge. Okay, the risk event occurring very likely at the beginning stage. Okay, so the chance of a risk event occurring are greatest in the concept planning a startup phases. So hence the chart looks very, the risk side looks very high. If you can see the beginning stage, okay, I'll just drawing. So here is very high because at that stage risk is high. And if you look into the chart, you can see when the event moves forward, then risk curve changes. Okay, risk curves started to flat out a little bit. As the project passes the halfway implementation mark, the cost of a risk event occurring increase again. Okay. So if you look at the chart, so it's flattening out, it's reducing. However, when it's past the middle way, risk occurring possibility increases again. So the risk event of a design flaw occurring after a prototype has been made has a greater cost or time impact than if the event occur in the startup stage. So even though sometimes midway risks are mitigated a little bit, and then risk probability picks up. However, it's very likely at this stage, the cost of preventing and correcting a problem is very low. But picks up, so you can see the curve is always go up. Okay, so that means the cost is always go up. The later the stage, the cost will be okay, even though the risk factors fluctuate, but the cost of correcting and managing risk increases all the way. Okay, so there are some examples. Okay, I'm just introducing. For example, the cost of mismanaged risk control early on in the projects is magnified by the ill-fated NASA project, NASA Mars Climate Orbit. Okay, that's ill-fated 1990 project. Investigations revealed that something went wrong. Lockheed Martin botched the design of critical navigation software, while flight computers on the ground did not calculate based on pounds of thrust, and then caused the problem. So the NASA orbiter arrived at Mars, but it didn't work properly. There was a crash, actually. An error occurred. Like this should have been pre-planned and managed better. Then that would the risk and failure would be avoided. So NASA's Associate Administrator for Space Science, that is the bottom line. Processes that were in place were not followed. Okay, that was the problem of the risk failure of this project. After the 9 months journey to the Mars, to the red planet, the $125 million US probe approached the Mars at very low altitude and bounced up and crashed. Okay, so that's is one example. And the reason, according to the management, is because something could be preventable. They were not seeing it properly, and the management approach on those risks were not in place properly either. So this is a example. Just so a proactive rather than reactive approach is important when managing risk. So risk management is always foreseeing in the future. Okay, that means planning for the future, which would be a proactive approach. If you wait for things to happen, that would be disastrous, or that would be very late. You don't want that happen. Sometimes even pre-planning, there are possibilities that you don't plan enough, and then when risks happens, they can be expensive, exceeding people's original perception. Then they can cause expanded disasters because the plan was not ready, or the plan was not thorough enough, okay, or well equipped enough. So benefits of risk management are proactive rather than reactive approach, and reduce the surprises and negative consequences. And in the meantime, prepare all the deliverables, look into all the nuances in the project. So put in place in every aspect, like examine, turn every corner, okay, turn every stone upside down, just to find out all the surprises, all the hidden places that may cause surprise, okay. And also provide better control for the future, improve chances of reaching project objectives on time and budget, and of meeting required performance. So when doing risk management, is not only about foreseeing some uncertain future situation, but also making sure that current progress and readiness and work can be done satisfactorily to the original objectives of this project. The risk risk management has a process standardized. Normally would take those steps, but can be depending on different projects. Okay, some steps probably quite complex with small sub steps, but some can be quite easy and simple depending on the risk being assessed. So risk identification. Okay, if it's an oil rig, then there are so many places that need to be examined. So risk identification can be very broad, okay, touching all the corners of this oil rig operation. And then after identification, it's risk assessment. This would be in terms of severity of the impact, the likelihood of it occurring, and how to control that situation. Step 3 would be risk response development. This would be some strategies developed in order to reduce the consequences or the negative impact or the likelihood of the risk being happening, okay, and developing contingency plan. Contingency plan refers to even in the case that this risk really happens, then what kind of approaches could be taken in order to reduce suffering or reduce financial losses and so on. And finally, risk response control. Okay, there are some further implementing strategies, monitoring, measurement, adjustment need to be done in this final stage. So I go through some of the key elements in the 4 steps quite quickly. So relatively speaking, at stage 1, so just take your runaway project, okay, as an example. So at risk identification in your fashion show project, you must identify something from we have some preliminary understanding that in a runaway, there are situations, for example, models fell off from the stage, that could happen, or models tripped on the stage, twist their ankles, etc. That can be.
Ma'am, you're muted. You're on mute.
Hello, I don't know who is muting me. It says me or my computer, but so anyway, so risk identification. Okay, I'm just giving you an example, thinking from your project perspective. What are the risks? You have a research, see some of the real events happening in the project runaway, all different risks, okay? And generate a list of deliverables, basically, that could affect the project through the brainstorming with your group, through the research on the internet, okay? Focus on the event that could produce consequences, okay? And particularly negative consequences or very magnified consequences. And use risk breakdown structure, similar to the WBS. In conjunction with WBS to analyze different risks. That means risks can happen at many stages. It wouldn't happening just at the end of the walking runaway stage, okay? The event stage, it can happen beforehand or at other stages. Next one is risk breakdown structure. So this is RBS. This is not WBS. Okay, this can work with WS together to help management team to identify the possible problems. Okay, the focus at the beginning should be on risks that can affect the whole project. Remember the charts. The beginning risk is small, but it will be less costly if you have planned very well and check all the specific areas with conjunction to WBS. An effective tool, this is a very effective tool, can help you to really look into different sections, different processes and steps in the project events. If there's anything happening, then something can be sorted very quickly or reported to the risk management team or the project manager. So partial risk profile for project development project. This is just some of profiles that you could ask, okay? Provide you some examples. You can look into this in conjunction with the assessment. So other technical aspects, for example, are the requirements stable? Design, does design depending on realistic or optimistic assumptions? So these are some questions you can ask in different aspects about possible risks. So risks, it would not be all the time a real big event like fire or people's life being threatened, okay, or flood or whatsoever. But it can be in other operational aspects. Okay, so for example, here it says designing. So it can be designing disaster that would be a risk that would impact the success or failure of that event. A schedule risk. So if it's scheduled to go ahead in that direction and something happened, the event couldn't go ahead with plan. That's a risk. That has to be almost like a management related risk. Staff risk, for example, this is the time that staff or models need to come, and then some models are stuck in the traffic, or some models had a strike. That can be just some risks you need to take into account. Okay, I remember we did the case study London Heathrow. I think that's almost like a risk management disaster because they have not foreseen something happening that not go ahead according to plan. Suddenly influx of customers to the airport. That's failure of risk management. Step 2, risk assessment. Are some techniques within this section, okay, something called a scenario analyze, for example. So maybe some risks are not very likely to happen or not deserve attention. For some risks, you could run like real modeling and see what is going to happen in the real life situation. The probability of those things can happen. So we're in defined conditions for impact scales. Okay, this is a chart. So because impact of risks ultimately need to be assessed in terms of project priority, different kinds of impact scales are used. Some scales may simply use rank order description, such as low, moderate, high, or very high. Okay, this is a very simplified method to rank the impact, but this can be quite subjective. But then when you're an expert working in this business for many years, then your estimation can be quite realistic. Okay, but still there are qualitative, there are estimations, and some may focus on the projects in general, while others focusing on specific aspects. The risk management team need to establish upfront what distinguish one from three, for example. Okay, they need to the team as a group, they need to have some specific measurements to understand what one mean and what three mean. Okay, that's used to measure the impacts of risks. And when it's measuring the impacts, this criteria should be looked at in terms of cost estimation, time estimation, scope, and quality. So these are some of the conditions and ranking criteria looking into the negative impact of the event. So for example, just using the runaway project. So if there's an event that the model does not turn up Okay, so you can rank the impact, the cost will be very high, because then that means this event is going to be cancelled almost. Okay, cost is high. That would be very high, 5, I think. Time, okay, time is high. Scope, project and item is effectively useless, high, I would say. Quality would be very bad. So that's very significant event. Well, then you have to plan a little bit. Just say some models do not turn up, then you might need to consider some contingency. Okay, if they do not turn up or someone are ill, then what would you do with in that situation? Okay, so that's this is a table just defining the impact of the events. Risk assessment form can be used. Okay, you can use this one in your real projects. So this document is a scenario analyzed document, can be seen in various risk assessment forms, normally used by different companies. This is a partial example of a risk assessment form. This is used in a software development project. Notice that in addition to evaluating the severity and the probability of risk events, the team also assess when the event might occur and its detection difficulties. Detection difficulties refers to its measurement of how easy it would be to detect that event was going to occur in time to take a mitigation approach. That is how much warning would be happening before the team can take a mitigation approach. This is a software development example. So there is one element. So means how likely the team could address this situation. So other than the risk event, the likelihood, impact, and detection difficulties. Okay, so these are some of the things that you can put in the risk assessment form. Okay, if you put them in text and in numbers, that will be so clear. I use the example of a project runaway again. So in this case, you can identify, for example, the food delivery issues, maybe alcohol problem, or even some people get drunk. Okay, that's just an example. Okay, then you can assess the possibility of this thing happens and what kind of impact it would have, how easy you can detect this situation, okay, the alcohol problem, that what I mean, as well as when and how you can address this problem. So this is a risk assessment form that you can incorporate into your assessment. Can you give an answer to these two questions? This is C, okay. How about question 2? Who said question A? Question A is not a risk. Question A is quite good, okay? It's achieving milestone in advance, ahead of schedule. That's quite good normally. That can't be a risk. Question 2, everyone.
A.
Yeah, someone said B. B is the risk assessment would involve prioritizing. B1 is correct. Very good. Okay. So risk severity matrix, as I mentioned, you can do the like responsibility matrix or risk assessment matrix or cost evaluation related. So this matrix is about risk severity. Okay, when it's come to the red part, it means very risky. And yellow is okay, and green is moderate. So using this tool can be useful, very visualized in analyzing different risk severity. You can find this quite useful in categorizing these different severities, and also on each dimensions. One dimension is the likelihood of the event happening, and on another dimension, vertical one horizontal one would be the impact. So impact and likelihood of the event happening. Okay, so one is likelihood, one is impact. If you get this table, if you get this table and you get all the numbers ranked, then you can get this matrix. Okay. Next one. So step 3, risk response development. So there are some methods. For example, very common ones were mitigating the risk, reduce the likelihood the event will occur, basically, and reducing the impact as well. There are also avoiding risk. If a project can avoid the risk, basically eliminate the possibility of the risk, and sometimes transferring risk that can happen to some projects. For example, if they transfer risk, they give risk to maybe to the suppliers, okay, or maybe to other stakeholders. So that can be, but always normally at a cost. If you want to transfer the risk to someone else, normally they have to pay some financial costs. Escalating risk, notifying the appropriate people within the organization of the threat. Okay, that's another approach of risk response. So not making this risk smaller, but making this event a bigger situation. So escalate it. So to make sure that people start to pay attention to the situation and develop coping strategies. And a final one is retaining risk. This is make a conscious decision to accept the risk of an event will occur. Then they have to live with it. They just have to develop some mechanism cope with it rather than thinking way to eliminate it. So basically live with the risk. Okay, there are a lot of situations in real life people have to live with the risk. Okay, contingency plan is defined as an alternative plan that will be used if a possible foreseen risk become a reality. So basically, two ways to do this job. So in the normal situation, they would go ahead with the plan quite happily. But when the risk event occurs, then they have to have a planned and scheduled contingency pathway to lead them to continue with the project, to work around the risk or mitigate the impact of the risk. If there's no contingency plan, if there's no risk, that's fine. Okay, if there is a risk, that can be really very costly, basically. So risk response matrix is another matrix that you can consider. This matrix are useful for summarizing how the project team plans to manage risk that has been identified. Okay, so if you have identified some risks, then you can use this matrix in the computer software developing project. This is what it has been used, and in this case, for example, if this risk happens, these are all identified risks, mitigating or contingency plan being put in the matrix. And in the meantime, it also mentions the triggers. Okay, this can be quite good. Some risks are triggered by some events. Trigger. Also, who is responsible? Okay, that's the responsibility matrix. Okay, so if in a tourism destination, volcano or tsunami happens, that's a huge natural risk. Then they can put this into plan. For example, the trigger of tsunami could be earthquake or some exploration, okay, explosion, something, or construction work sometimes can cause a small earthquake as well. Okay, you can put these things into that possibility. And then who is going to be responsible of what? That are quite specific in terms of the accountability of an uncertain event happens. So anyway, this would be a responsible matrix. And risks and contingency plans can look into risks that could happen in different dimensions. Some are technical risks, some are schedule-related risks, some cost risks, funding risks. For big, long-lasting project, cost risks, schedule risk, or funding risk happens very often. Sometimes people complain their projects on hold because of the funding problems. If, for example, the Glasgow Science Museum had funding problems, it had some problems. I don't know exactly how they develop a contingency plan to work around those risks. Opportunity management is another approach. Opportunity management, for the sake of opportunity management, normally we look into the negative aspect of risks, but that's for the purposes of teaching. But sometimes there's a flip side, actually. What could go right on a project? This is commonly referred to as a positive risk or an opportunity. So an opportunity is an event that can have a positive impact on the project objectives. I give you an example. Usually favorable weather, okay, can accelerate, for example, the event participants. So if it's normal condition, people might anticipate normal participants. But in the event of holiday, so for example, or some unpredicted weather event, you might suddenly attract more participants to that event. That can be a positive. That's quite uncertain, but can be a positive. That is an opportunity. For this situation, I think event management team needed to have some anticipation as well previously beforehand to identify possible situations. So if this project run away suddenly attract more participants than you are expected, then that can be good opportunity, but also imposing some challenges, because if you have not prepared enough drinks or enough facilities or tickets, then you couldn't accommodate those opportunities. That opportunity can turn into a disaster, or opportunity can slip away, basically. Okay, so that's something you could look at when or projects could identify when, or if there are any possible positive opportunities could occur during the event process. Just to prepare for the contingency situation. So many of the projects would consider to give some contingency funding, basically. So contingency funding are those capital project funds that cover the project risks. You need to manage the project well to identify those things in advance. So a certain amount, okay, appropriate amount of funds can be allocated to that project as contingency fund, basically. Okay, to prepare for the uncertain funding issues or funding risks. And there is also a possibility to use time buffers. So not only funding can impose risks, time, okay, limited time can also impose some negative impacts in the project and causing issues. So give the project scheduling some time buffers. Add to activity with those with severe risks, like a longer time buffer. Add to merger activities that are prone to delays. Okay, add to activity that requires scarce resources. Give the time buffer, basically using time to exchange cost, to exchange financial resources. Budget estimation. So budget estimation are related to the contingency fund. Then this is part of the contingency plan. This can be put into the costing at the beginning of the project. So in the charity modeling event, fashion show, so some maybe project budget or budget reserve can be allocated, and then associated reserve, you need to specify the reasoning and the possible risks that can be used, can be allocated with those funds. Time buffer example. Okay, so this shows the time buffer example. Step 4, finally, step 4 refers to risk register, risk response, basically. So typically the results of the first 3 steps of the risk management process are summarized in a formal document, often called the risk register. A risk register details all the identified risks, including the impacts, likelihood to take place, probability of occurring, severity, contingency plan, contingency manning, etc. Okay, the register is the backbone of the last step, basically, in the risk management process. So basically, it's a risk control based on the first 3 steps. Risk control involves executing the risk response strategies. So this is the stage when the things you planned, okay, you wish it doesn't happen, but then in this case it happens, then this step 4 is what you're going to do to respond to it. Risk assessment and updating needs need to be in place as well. The project team needs to be on constant alert for new unforeseen risks. Management need to be sensitive that others may not be forthright in acknowledging new risks and problems. So these are some of the response control. So quick response in relation to risk register, risk control, including executing the response strategy monitoring, and also constantly assessing and realigning the risk management system. So when change needed to be in place, there are a few steps. This relates to the risks happening, control strategies are in place, but some changes needed to be taken into place. Okay, to summarize, the benefit of change control are these 8 criteria. So inconsequential changes are discouraged by the formal process, but cost of change are maintained in a log. Okay, so these are some change management actions. This is an example of change request log. Okay, if these changes happen quite often, then this is very important because it details all the occurrence of these changes and the time-wise, the cost-wise related information. So keep a very detailed log of change requests is quite vital for big project management. Okay, these are some of the key terms for today. There is a appendix that you can look at. This just a copy from the textbook, okay, in conjunction with last week's topic, PERT simulation. There are some statistics involved. Okay, you can have an overview of this topic, but this is slightly advanced. So for your assessment related scope, you're now required to have a very solid grasp at this topic. After this appendix, the reading had been given to you. Okay, the 2 chapters in the core textbook, and now you can you can watch this video, which is the chapter by chapter introduction of this topic. And when you come back, you can have a break. And when you come back, we will do the quiz basically. Okay, this quiz is here.